Ben liked his life quiet. He liked his small room, his neat bed, the little desk with a plant that did not need much light, and the soft hum of the station walls that sounded like steady rain. He worked day shifts, fixed cables, checked pressure seals, and came home the same way every day. He made tea, watched the stars through the small window, and wrote short notes to himself about the things he hoped to build one day, like a better air filter or a fast charger that did not overheat. He was not a hero. He did not chase adventure. He liked calm. Aurora's Rest was not a grand station. It was a mid-range human colony hub around a cool blue star. It had narrow halls and old paint, and sometimes the gravity felt a little heavy in the morning. But it was steady. Ships came and went. Workers ate together in the same cafeteria, and music always played from someone's tablet nearby. Days, travelers passed through. Miners, traders, students, and people looking for a new place to start again. Ben liked that part, too. He liked the soft buzz of life moving around him. On a calm afternoon after he had finished checking ventilation, lines on Deck 6, his ID buzzed with a message from the housing board. It was short and polite, like all official station messages. Temporary housing assignment. Due to unexpected arrival and space constraints, a guest will share your unit. Duration, 7 to 14 days. Thank you for helping. Ben read it twice. A roommate? He did not mind sharing on principle, but his room was small. He stood in the doorway and looked around. There was his bed, and across from it, a fold-out couch he rarely used. There was a shelf with a few old paper books and a cabinet with basic tools. He was sure a second person could fit. It would be tight, but possible. He made a list in his head. Clear the couch, wash extra sheets, fold towels, make tea for the guest to feel welcome. He could be a good host. At 1900 hours, the door chimed. Ben put on a friendly smile and opened it. A station security officer stood there with a tablet, and beside the officer was the guest, an alien traveler who looked calm and a little tired after a long trip. She was tall and slim, with a gentle shimmer to her skin as if she had walked through water that had kissed her with a soft glow. Her face was kind, with wide eyes that seemed to gather light rather than reflect it. She carried one small case. "This is Lyra of Vayrith," the officer said. "Her transport pod was damaged during docking. We're arranging repairs. She needs a place to stay for a few days." Lyra inclined her head. "Thank you," she said, her voice low and musical, like a restful song. "I will keep to a small space. I will not be trouble." "You're welcome," Ben said. "I cleared the couch. I have tea if you like tea." "I do not know tea," Lyra said, almost apologetic. Ben smiled. "We can start with water." After the officer left and the door sealed, the room felt smaller, but not in a bad way. Lyra placed her case beside the couch, and her fingers hovered over the edges as if everything needed asking before touching. She looked at the plant by Ben's desk. The plant had thick leaves and a brave spirit, and touched the air near it, curious but careful. "It survives with little light," Ben said. "It is stubborn." "I like stubborn," Lyra replied softly. "It means it wants to live." Ben offered water in a clear cup. Lyra held it with both hands, as if water deserved full respect. She sipped and closed her eyes. "Thank you," she said again. They talked in small pieces. Ben was not forceful with questions. He let her share only what she wanted. She said Vayrith was a water world, with city reefs that rose like giant shells. Her people learned to swim before they learned to walk. She had been traveling to study systems for balancing humidity in artificial habitats, something she knew well. Her transport had a mechanical failure. The station took the pod in, and she had to wait. Ben showed her the small drawers she could use. He placed extra towels on the couch and smoothed them, then felt silly and smoothed them again, as if the towels were important ambassadors. Lyra watched with quiet humor. "Your place is neat," she said. "It has a calm order." "I like things where I left them," he replied. "If something moves, I can't find it again." He tried to joke, and she understood. By night, they settled. Lyra sat cross-legged on the couch, reading something on her small device, the language a ribbon of marks Ben could not read. He read a few pages of a paper book about fixing ancient machines with common parts. The room hummed. The station breathed. Somewhere, gentle music drifted through the vent. Someone down the hall was playing a slow guitar song. "Good night," Ben said. He turned off the main light. A soft lamp near the plant stayed on, warm and very dim. Lyra folded her device, pressed it flat until it clicked, and shaped the thin blanket around herself like a careful wave. "Good night," she said. Ben slept easily. He always did. He liked the weight of the blanket, the sound of the air system, the knowledge that he had finished his tasks. He did not know how long he had been asleep when the first change came. It was small, a whisper of air, a soft shiver in the room's usual sound. In dreams, this might have been nothing, but his eyes opened. He lay still, not yet fully awake, and felt the room around him. The dim lamp's glow made a gentle circle on the wall. The plant's leaves made little shadows like soft hands. He heard the station's breathing as always. Then he felt a weight. It was not heavy like a box. It was a sudden, careful weight that landed across his chest and shoulder, then paused. Ben's heart jumped, as anyone's would. His mind reached for explanations. Maybe the blanket slid? No. Maybe he was still dreaming? No. The air tasted different now, like cool metal and salt. There was the faint scent of rain, which made no sense on a station of metal. He felt hands, light, shaking, on his shoulder. "Ben," a whisper said. It was Lyra's voice, but the calm music was gone. It was tight with worry. "Do not move." His breath caught. He did not move. He lay under the weight of a person, kneeling on his bed, one hand on his shoulder, the other on the edge of his pillow. His heart beat louder. He could feel her tremble through the mattress. Her face was close, and in the dim light he could see her eyes wider than before, their gentle glow now sharp and watchful. "Is something wrong?" he whispered back, trying to keep his voice as steady as hers asked him to be. "Listen," she said, barely shaping the word. Ben listened. He heard the station hum, the soft guitar song far away, the steady breath of the air vent. On the ceiling above his bed was a plain panel. He had seen it 1,000 times. It had a small gap near the corner where the seal tacked down a little, crooked. He had planned to fix it one day. He stared at the gap now because Lyra was staring at it, and he understood that she was not looking at him at all. She was looking at something above him. In the quiet, a noise scratched the edge of the air. Not loud, not obvious, but there. A faint tapping like a fingertip on glass. Once, then nothing. Then again, barely there, but there. It came from the ceiling panel. Ben's first urge was to sit up. He wanted to push the panel, to turn on the bright light, to name the sound. But Lyra's hand pressed his shoulder, firm and careful. "Do not move," she repeated. Her eyes did not leave. "The ceiling." Ben swallowed. "What is it?" Her lips parted, but she did not answer. The tapping came once more, softer than before, as if whoever made it did not want to be heard, and yet somehow wanted to test who was listening. Lyra shifted her weight, balanced above him without a sound. She had the still grace of someone, trained to swim in silence. Her breath was slow, her back straight, her focus full. The station hum rose for a moment, then settled. Ben wondered if the sound masked or mirrored something else. He started to feel the air as Lyra might feel it. The way it moved across skin, the way a small draft could come from a tiny place. There was a draft near the panel, cool and thin. He had noticed it on cold nights. He always told himself he would reseal the panel. He had not. Now that tiny choice felt large in his mind. The tapping stopped. The room went back to its gentle noises. Lyra did not relax. She waited a long 3 breaths, 4, 5. Then finally she eased back, the careful weight lifting from his chest. She slid off the bed with the quiet balance of a dancer, keeping one hand on the mattress until her feet found the floor. She stayed crouched, eyes still fixed on the panel. It moved away, she whispered, for now. Ben sat up, slow. He turned his head toward the lamp and made the light a little brighter. He looked at the ceiling. The panel looked the same as always, but now he could not unhear the sound he had heard. He could not unfeel the cool from the small gap. He looked at Lyra with 100 questions pressing behind his tongue. He chose the simplest. What was that? Lyra's hands were pressed flat on her knees, as if she was calming herself. She took another breath before answering. I am sorry, she said. I did not want to wake you this way. I would like to be awake for this way, Ben said softly, trying to make the line gentle enough to help her smile. She almost did, but her worry was stronger and stayed on her face. I heard something, she said. I felt a change in the... She paused, searching for a word that could cross from her language to his. The field in the room. A small wave. The kind that happens when a living thing moves near a metal skin. I learned to feel it as a child, because where I am from, it is useful. Ben nodded as if this was normal, because right now he wanted to give her a steady place to stand. You felt something on the panel? Yes, she said. It was over you. I jumped to... She glanced. The next morning began with the steady rhythm of Aurora's rest coming to life. Somewhere beyond their small unit, people were already walking to the cafeteria, tools clinking in their belts. Service drones rolled along the corridors carrying trays of breakfast or stacks of clean linens. The air had the faint smell of baked bread drifting in through the vent, one of the few warm scents that could cut through the metallic tang of station life. Ben had promised they would start with tea. He set 2 cups on the desk, one for himself, one for Lyra. She approached the desk slowly, curiosity in her eyes, and bent her head slightly to look at the cup as if it were a piece of delicate art. It's simple, Ben explained, pouring. The amber liquid. Steeped leaves in hot water. It tastes different depending on the plant. She took the cup with both hands, inhaled, and blinked in mild surprise. It smells like sunlight on seaweed. That's a new description, Ben said, smiling. I usually hear people say it smells like grass. They both sipped in silence for a few moments. Ben's mind was already on the task ahead, the ceiling panel. The events of the night had pressed into his thoughts like a mark left by a heavy tool. He didn't scare easily, but last night wasn't just about a sound. Lyra's reaction had been sharp, instinctive, almost like she had seen this kind of thing before. He glanced at her over the rim of his cup. I suppose you're ready to see what's behind that panel? Lyra nodded, setting her cup down with care. Yes, but before we open it, I want to listen. Listen, Ben asked. My kind hears more than ears, she said softly. We feel movement in fields, magnetic, electric, even tiny pressure changes. It takes focus. She stepped under the panel and closed her eyes. For a long moment she stood still, her hands slightly apart, fingers relaxed. The stillness was so complete that even Ben felt the air in the room pause with her. Then she opened her eyes and shook her head. Quiet now. Whatever was there, it has moved. Ben wasn't sure if he felt relieved or more uneasy. Then it's a good time to check. He fetched a small stepladder from the corner, one of the few tools too awkward to keep in his kit. Standing under the panel, he ran his fingers over the edges, checking the seal. The gel he'd applied last night was intact, which meant if something had moved, it didn't come back this way. "Here goes," he said, twisting the latch with his screwdriver. The panel came loose with a small hiss as the temperature difference between the room and the vent space equalized. He lifted it down carefully. Inside was darkness, the kind of darkness that swallows light. Ben clicked on his small hand lamp and aimed it in. The narrow vent was lined with silver metal and tiny rows of cooling fins. Dust floated in slow swirls. He saw nothing unusual at first. Then at the far edge of the beam, something glimmered faintly. "See that?" he asked. Lyra stepped closer and peered inside. Her eyes sharpened. "Yes, that is not part of your station." Ben reached in with a gloved hand and pulled it out. It was a thin, sticky thread, almost like a spider's silk but faintly glowing. It clung to his glove even after he tried to shake it off. He scraped it into a small sample container. "I found something like this yesterday," he told her, "in an access panel down the hall." Lyra's gaze fixed on him, and he could see the way her body tensed, not in panic, but in deep concern. "Ben, you need to tell me exactly where." So he did. He described the open panel on Deck 4, the faint glow, the way it seemed oddly fresh, like it had just been placed. Lyra listened without interrupting, her hands curling slightly as if she were holding back words. Finally, she said, "On my world, there is a hunter. It uses threads like these to mark places it has passed. It feels vibration through them. They are not a trap. They are a warning." Ben frowned. "A warning to what?" "To itself," Lyra replied. "It moves in patterns. It remembers the places it has searched. It is patient." The way she said patient made Ben feel the word differently. Not like waiting for a friend in the cafeteria, but like something that could watch and wait for weeks without tiring. "I thought whatever." "You heard last night might have been a rat-sized thing," Ben said slowly. "Now I'm thinking, bigger?" Lyra didn't answer right away. She looked at the vent, then at the panel in his hands, then back at him. "It is not large like a beast you might fear in a forest, but it is clever, and it feeds." That last word landed with weight, though she didn't say what it fed on. Ben decided not to press, not yet. "All right, if this thing is moving through vents, we need to map them." He turned to his desk and opened the maintenance schematics on his pad. The station's vent network looked like a maze drawn by someone who loved puzzles. Branching ducts, cross-connects, service access points. Any one of them could hide something small and agile. Lyra studied the map beside him. "It could be here," she said, pointing at a section near the old hydroponics bay. "The temperature there is higher. It might like warmth." Ben nodded. "I can get clearance to check that section. It's partly closed for repairs anyway." They spent the next hour making a plan. Ben marked a path that would let them inspect, without drawing attention. The last thing they wanted was station rumors spreading faster than facts. Lyra agreed to come, but only if she could lead when they were in the narrow spaces. "I can feel it before you see it," she explained. By midday, they were in the quiet maintenance corridors. Here, the air smelled faintly of machine oil and the walls carried the steady vibration of the station's life systems. Ben carried his tools. Lyra carried nothing but a small pouch that hung at her side. They reached the first access hatch and opened it. Inside, the duct stretched in both directions. The glow of Ben's lamp touched something on the left wall. More threads. He leaned closer. This time they were fresher. The glow pulsed faintly, like the slow beat of a heart. Lyra crouched beside him, her voice low. "It passed here recently. Hours, maybe less." "Then we're close," Ben said. They followed. The duct carefully, stopping every few meters so Lyra could listen with her strange sense. Twice she raised a hand, signaling him to freeze. Each time they heard faint sounds, not the steady hum of fans, but something softer, irregular. Once, it was a scrape. Another time, it was like a breath drawn slowly. The closer they got to the hydroponics bay, the warmer the air became. It carried a dampness, too, the kind that clung to skin. The hatch to the bay was sealed with a simple mechanical lock, easy for Ben to open. He eased it aside and peered in. The bay was dim, lit only by the soft green glow of the plant lights. Rows of empty troughs stretched out, some with curling brown vines from old crops. The air was thick and still. Somewhere, water dripped. Lyra stepped inside first, her bare feet making no sound. She moved between the troughs, head tilted slightly, sensing. Ben followed, his boots quiet against the damp floor. They reached the center of the bay, and then Lyra froze, her eyes shifted upward. Ben followed her gaze and saw it. Just for a moment, a shape clinging to the overhead support beam, blending so perfectly with the metal that it seemed part of it. But then the eyes opened. 6 small points of reflected green light. Before Ben could focus, the shape slid backward into the shadows, moving in a way that was both fluid and deliberate. He felt a shiver run through him. "You saw it?" "Yes," Lyra said. Her voice was steady, but her hands had curled again. "It saw us, too." Ben felt his instincts sharpen. "Then it knows we're looking." Lyra met his gaze. "And it will start to watch us in return." They left the bay carefully, sealing it behind them. In the corridor, Ben leaned against the wall, trying to process what he had just seen. "So, we know it's real. We know it's in the vents. And we know it's not afraid." Lyra nodded. "That makes it more dangerous." Ben rubbed his face. "Then we need a plan to trap it." Her eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. "A trap must be made in a place it will not expect. But it will take more than bait. It must feel safe enough to come close and be caught before it can escape." Ben looked at her. "You've done this before, haven't you?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, "On Vayrith, we learn to survive by studying what hunts us. The patterns are always there, if you know how to see." Back in their unit, they spread the station map again, marking the spots with threads, the vents that connected to the hydroponics bay, and the possible exits. As they worked, Ben realized something. He no longer saw Lyra as just a temporary guest. She was a partner now, someone who moved differently through the world, someone who could sense what he could not. When they finally set their pens down, the plan wasn't finished, but the first lines were clear. The creature had lived in their quiet station long enough. Now, they would start turning the hunt back on it. And though neither said it out loud, both knew that last night, when Lyra had fallen on him in the dark, had been the start of something much larger than just a strange sound in the ceiling. Ben woke early the next morning, not because of an alarm, but because of a quiet restlessness that had settled into him since their trip to the hydroponics bay. Sleep had been shallow, broken by half-dreams of green lights watching him from above. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face, and glanced toward the couch. Lyra was already awake. She sat cross-legged, her eyes half-closed, hands resting lightly on her knees. It wasn't the stillness of someone lost in thought. It was the focused stillness of someone listening for something very far away. "You've been up long?" Ben asked quietly. "Since the shift change," she said, opening her eyes. "The station feels different then. Many people move, but the air systems shift in patterns that leave certain corridors more quiet." Ben tilted his head. "And that's good for us?" "It is good for finding what hides," Lyra replied. "When the background changes, the small sounds stand out more." Ben poured himself some tea and slid a cup toward her. "Any small sounds worth noting?" Lyra took the cup. wrapped both hands around it, and stared into the steam. It was near the cargo wing, moving fast but not in a straight path. It's exploring. Ben sat down opposite her. Or looking for food, he said. She didn't disagree, which worried him more than if she had. They reviewed the map again. The cargo wing had multiple vent connections leading deeper into the station. If the creature could move freely, it, might reach living quarters in minutes. Ben decided they had to check it before it moved closer to where people slept. They left after first meal, using the maintenance corridors to avoid crowded walkways. The cargo wing smelled faintly of ozone and metal crates. Lyra stopped near one of the older bulkheads, laying a hand against it as if feeling the station's pulse. "Here," she said softly. Ben crouched, shining his lamp into the nearest vent grill. The faint glow of threads was there again, but they were different. Instead of single lines, several threads had been woven together into a thicker strand. "This is new," Ben muttered. "Why would it do this?" Lyra studied them without touching. "It marks territory when it decides to stay close. This is not just passing through. It is claiming space." That thought sent a prickle up Ben's neck. Then it's not just hunting here. It's setting up. They followed the direction of the thicker strand, moving slowly so the sound of their steps didn't echo too far. The path led them deeper into the wing, past unused storage bays. The lighting was dim here, and the hum of machinery was fainter, replaced by the occasional creak of old metal under pressure changes. Halfway down the corridor, Lyra stopped so suddenly that Ben almost walked into her. She held up a hand for silence, her eyes narrowing toward the ceiling. Ben heard it too, a faint rhythmic clicking, not like the tapping from the first night. This was sharper, deliberate, almost like claws on metal. It was moving above them, pausing every few seconds as if listening for something. Then, without warning, the sound stopped. Ben glanced at Lyra. "Where?" Her hand shot out, pressing gently but firmly against his chest. "It's listening to us," she whispered. They stood frozen for long seconds. Then the clicking started again, but it was retreating this time, moving toward one of the higher vent shafts. When the sound had faded, Ben exhaled. "It's toying with us." "Yes," Lyra said. "It wants to know how we move. That means it's thinking." They decided to split their work for the day. Ben would access the station's internal logs to see if any other workers had reported strange noises or damaged panels. Lyra would follow the creature's trail as far as she could, using her ability to sense field changes. By midday, they met again in the small corner of the cafeteria. Ben had pulled several reports, most written off as minor maintenance, issues, or harmless noise complaints, but they lined up perfectly with the path Lyra had traced. "It's been here for weeks," Ben said, tapping the screen, "and it's moving in loops, almost like it's circling the living quarters, without going in." Lyra leaned closer, her eyes scanning the reports. "It may be waiting for the right time. On my world, when they do this, it means they've found something specific they want." Ben gave her a long look. "And you think it's you?" She didn't flinch. "Yes." Ben waited for her to explain, but she looked away toward the wall. He could tell she was weighing whether to say more. Finally, she sighed. "The reason I left Varith is not only to study humidity systems. One of these creatures began following me after a dive near the deep reef. I don't know why. I left my city to draw it away from others. I thought I had lost it in the open currents, but if it's stowed away in my transport pod..." Her voice trailed off. Ben set his cup down. "Then this isn't just a station problem. It's personal." "It is both now," Lyra said quietly. "And because it knows me, it knows my patterns. That makes it harder to trick." They returned to their unit late in the shift, both thinking through the same problem. How to trap something that could sense and avoid danger as easily as it could climb walls. Ben began sketching ideas on his pad. Pressure trigger nets, magnetic field disruptors, sound-based lures. Lyra watched, occasionally pointing to flaws in his plans. "That won't work," she said at one point, tapping the pressure net diagram. "It will feel the shift in air pressure before stepping into it." "Then we need something instant," Ben said. "No warning." Lyra thought for a moment. "It is drawn to heat when it feeds. If we can create a sudden heat spike in an enclosed space, we might lure it in and shut the exit before it realizes," Ben finished. They began refining the idea. The hydroponics bay came up as a possible site. Its warmth and humidity would match the creature's preferred environment. They could rig portable heat emitters to create a concentrated hotspot, but there was a problem. "Someone has to be there to trigger the seal," Ben pointed out. Lyra didn't hesitate. "I will do it." "No," Ben said firmly. "If it's after you, being in the same room will just give it the advantage." Her gaze was steady. "And if you are there alone, it will not come close enough. It has already seen you. It knows you are not its target." Ben hated that she was right. "Then we both go," he said finally. "But I'll handle the controls. You stay in the center near the emitters. We keep comms open. If anything goes wrong, we both get out." Lyra agreed, though he could tell she was still holding part of the plan in her own mind, some piece she wasn't saying yet. That night, Ben tried to sleep, but every small creak in the station made him open his eyes. Once, he thought he saw a shadow slide across the vent near the corner, but when he switched on the lamp, there was nothing. Across the room, Lyra sat on the couch with her knees drawn up, her gaze fixed on the ceiling. She didn't seem startled. "Just patient. You ever sleep?" Ben asked quietly. "Not much here," she replied. "It is easier to hear when I'm still." "Did you hear it tonight?" She nodded slightly. "It came near, then left. It is learning our scent now." Ben frowned. "That's unsettling." "Yes," Lyra agreed softly. "But it means it's getting closer to making a move. That may give us the chance we need." The next morning, they began assembling the equipment for their trap. Ben signed out portable heat emitters from the maintenance inventory, claiming they were for accelerated drying tests in the hydroponics bay. No one questioned him. It wasn't unusual for repair crews to use odd equipment combinations. Lyra prepared the space by clearing old plant troughs and sealing side vents so the creature would have fewer escape routes. The bay felt different. Now, less abandoned, more like a stage being set for a performance neither of them could fully predict. By late afternoon, the setup was ready. 3 heat emitters were arranged in a triangle in the center of the bay. The control station was tucked near the main door, connected to the emitters and the bay's heavy seal mechanism. Ben checked the controls one last time. "Once it's inside the triangle, I'll trigger the emitters to full. That should hold its attention long enough for the seal to close." "And if it tries to escape before the seal is shut?" Lyra asked. Ben glanced at her. "Then we adapt." She gave a small smile. Adaptation is survival. That evening, they left the bay and returned to their unit, both knowing that tomorrow would be the real test. Ben made tea without thinking, more for the habit than the drink itself. Lyra accepted her cup and they sat in quiet for a while. Finally, Ben said, "You know, if this works, you might finally be free of it." Lyra looked into the steam of her cup. "Yes, but freedom is strange. Sometimes it feels lighter than air. Sometimes it feels empty." Ben didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded, and they let the silence settle between them. Somewhere above, faint but certain, came the sound of a single tap on metal. Not hurried, not hesitant, just one, and then stillness. Morning came slower than usual, as if the station itself sensed the weight of the day ahead. Ben woke before his alarm, already halfway out of bed before he realized he hadn't slept much at all. His mind had kept him half awake, running through every possible way their plan in the hydroponics bay could go wrong. Lyra was up too, quietly folding her blanket and setting it aside. She looked calm. But Ben had already learned that her calm didn't mean she was relaxed. It meant she was ready. "You eat anything yet?" Ben asked, rubbing his eyes. She shook her head. "I do not like food before I hunt." Ben tried a small smile. "Guess I'll just have tea then, but after this we both eat." They shared a quiet breakfast, or what passed for breakfast. Ben had his tea, and Lyra sipped water as if it were a deliberate ritual. They didn't talk much. Both of them seemed to be saving their words for later. The hydroponics bay was already warm when they arrived. The heat emitters they had set up yesterday were in standby mode, a faint orange glow under their panels. The space smelled faintly of damp soil, though most of the troughs were dry and cracked. The air was thick, not uncomfortable yet, but heavy enough to hold on to scents. Ben checked the control console near the main door. The power readings were steady, the emitter triggers were linked, and the door's heavy seal was functional. "We'll need to wait," Ben said. "If we activate too soon, it might sense the trap." Lyra nodded. She stepped into the center of the triangle formed by the emitters, her movements slow and deliberate. Her bare feet made no sound against the floor. "I will stand here. We'll listen." Ben took his place by the controls, keeping the bay door half open for now to let cooler corridor air drift in. They would close it when the time was right. Minutes stretched into an hour. The only sounds were the soft hum of the emitters and the distant groan of old pipes in the walls. Ben shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes flicking, between Lyra and the console. She hadn't moved except to slowly turn her head, scanning the space with that sense she seemed to carry in her bones. Then she raised a hand, just slightly. Ben straightened. "You hear something?" She didn't answer immediately. Her head tilted, eyes narrowing toward the vent in the far corner. "It is near," she said softly. Ben glanced at the console. The temperature in the bay had risen slightly, though he hadn't touched the emitters. That meant the heat was coming from somewhere else. Another minute passed. Then came the sound. Faint, like something brushing against metal, followed by a small, deliberate click. It was above them, moving in slow, calculated steps. "It's on the ceiling supports," Ben whispered. Lyra's eyes didn't leave the vent. Not yet. "Wait until it is inside." Ben's hand hovered over the emitter trigger. His pulse was loud in his ears. The creature emerged slowly from the vent. At first, it was just a shadow, blending perfectly with the metal. Then, as it moved, forward. Its eyes caught the dim plant lights, 6 small points of reflected green that shifted as it adjusted its angle. It was no larger than a medium-sized dog, but its body was unnervingly lean, built for climbing and gripping. The surface of its skin shimmered faintly like wet stone. It paused on the support beam, motionless for several heartbeats, as if it were testing the air. Lyra's body was perfectly still, but Ben could feel her focus sharpen. "Now," she said quietly. Ben hit the trigger. The emitters flared to full. Power instantly, flooding the center of the bay with a sudden concentrated wave of heat. To human senses, it was just warm enough to be uncomfortable. But to the creature, it was like a beacon. It moved. Fast. It dropped from the beam with a silent, fluid twist, landing in the center of the bay. Its head turned sharply toward Lyra, its body low to the ground. For a moment, it seemed to be deciding, fight or feed. Ben slammed the door control. The heavy seal began to slide shut. The creature reacted instantly, twisting toward the exit. But the heat seemed to hold its attention just long enough for the door to close with a resonant thud. They had it trapped. Ben's relief lasted only a second. The creature darted sideways, not toward the door, but toward the wall, and climbed. Its movements were unnatural in their speed and precision, each step a silent grip on metal. Lyra shifted, turning to face it, but didn't run. "It's testing. The space," she said. "It wants to know where it can hide." Ben grabbed the portable net launcher from beside the console. "Let's not give it time to think." The creature lunged toward the far corner, and Ben fired. The net burst from the launcher, spreading wide, but the creature twisted mid-leap, slipping past the edge of the mesh with inches to spare. It landed on a trough, skidding across the cracked soil, then scaled the wall again. "It's too fast," Ben muttered. Lyra stepped toward it, her voice low but carrying in the enclosed space. "It knows me. It will watch me." Ben realized. What she meant, if she kept its focus, he might get another shot. She moved slowly, deliberately, circling to keep the creature's eyes on her. Its body tensed, muscles shifting under its slick surface. The green reflections of its eyes didn't blink. Ben adjusted his aim, waiting for the moment it committed to movement. It came suddenly. The creature leaped toward Lyra, mouth opening. In a flash of sharp, needle-like structures, she sidestepped with smooth precision, and in that instant, Ben fired again. This time, the net caught. The creature hit the floor tangled in the mesh, thrashing with a speed that made the metal floor vibrate. The net's magnetic nodes clamped to the surface, holding it down. Ben moved quickly, reinforcing the net's locks. Lyra stayed back, watching closely. "It's strong," Ben said through gritted teeth. "Help me secure—" He stopped when he saw Lyra's expression. Her eyes were locked on the creature, but there was no triumph there. Only something heavier. Recognition. "This is the same one," she said quietly. "The one from Vayrith." Ben looked from her to the creature. "You're sure?" "It carries the same pattern in its scent field. I have not forgotten." They called station security, who arrived with a reinforced containment unit. The officers, 2 humans and a Sorin from the agricultural deck, worked quickly, transferring the netted creature into the sealed pod. Ben gave his report, keeping the details simple. "We found it in the hydroponics bay, used heat to lure it, trapped it with a net." The senior officer, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, nodded. "We'll take it to the research wing, see if it's dangerous before deciding where to send it." Lyra's jaw tightened at the word dangerous, but she didn't speak. When the officers left, taking the creature with them, the bay felt strangely empty, like a stage after the actors had gone. Walking back to their unit, Ben finally asked, "What happens if the research team decides it's not a threat?" Lyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Then they will be wrong." "You think it'll try again?" Her answer was simple. "If it wakes and remembers, yes." Ben didn't argue. He'd seen the intelligence in those green eyes, the way it moved with purpose. It wasn't an animal acting on instinct alone. It was something that planned. Back in the unit, Ben set the net launcher aside and collapsed into his chair. At least for now. It's not crawling through the vents. Lyra stood by the window looking out at the distant stars. For now is never forever. That night, the station seemed quieter than it had in days. The vents hummed with nothing more than circulating air. The panel above Ben's bed stayed sealed. He could almost believe the danger was over. Almost. Just before he drifted into sleep, he opened his eyes and saw Lyra still sitting on the couch, awake, watching the ceiling. Not tense, not afraid, just watching. It was then he understood. Even if the creature never came back, Lyra had been living with its shadow for a long time. For 2 days, life returned to its usual rhythm on Aurora's Rest. People walked the corridors without noticing anything unusual. Service drones hummed along their paths. The smell of warm bread drifted from the cafeteria each morning. Ben even caught himself thinking about regular work, the faulty wiring on Deck 6, the weak gravity plate in a supply hall. But whenever he passed the research wing, a part of him tensed. That was where they had taken the creature. He hadn't heard much from the security team since. On the third morning, as he was checking a circuit board in his unit, the door chime sounded. Lyra opened it before Ben could reach it. A tall woman in a white research coat stood outside, holding a data pad. "Ben Cade?" the woman asked. "That's me," Ben said, standing. "I'm Dr. Wren from the biology division," she said. "You were involved in the containment of the unidentified organism?" "Yes," Ben said slowly. "Is there a problem?" Wren hesitated, just a fraction, but enough for Ben to notice. "The specimen is alive and stable, but it's showing unusual behavior. Specifically, it seems to react when certain people approach the containment cell." Ben's eyes narrowed. "Certain people meaning Lyra?" Wren glanced at Lyra, who stood silent watching. "Yes. It becomes more active when she's near, almost agitated." "That's not surprising," Lyra said softly. "It followed me here." Wren frowned. "We'd like to run a controlled test, bring her near the containment unit, measure its response." "No," Ben said instantly. It's dangerous." "It's behind a triple-layer barrier," Wren assured him. "There's no physical risk." Lyra placed a hand on Ben's arm. "It will not be worse than what has already been. I will go." The research wing felt different from the rest of the station. Colder, sharper, with bright white lights and the faint scent of sterilizing chemicals. They passed through 2 security checkpoints before entering a long observation hall lined with reinforced glass. The creature was inside the final chamber. It was still netted, but the restraints had been modified. Heavy magnetic clamps held the net to the floor. Even so, its body shifted constantly, muscles coiling and relaxing, eyes never still. When it saw Lyra, it froze for a heartbeat. Then the movement changed. It began to pull against the net, not blindly, but in a pattern, testing one corner then another. Its eyes locked on her, and Ben saw something he didn't like at all. Recognition. Wren's voice was low, as if she didn't want to disturb the thing. That reaction started within seconds of her arrival. Its pulse rate doubles. Bioelectric. Activity spikes. Ben folded his arms. "So it's fixated on her?" "Yes," Wren said. "And that's unusual. Most predatory species don't focus on one individual this strongly unless there's a specific reason." They left the wing shortly after. Lyra was silent until they were halfway back to their unit. Then she said, "You asked before why it follows me. I think I must answer now." Ben glanced at her. "You don't have to if you don't want." "I must," she said firmly, "because it may not stop unless we understand." They walked into their unit, and Lyra stood near the small plant on Ben's desk, touching the air above its leaves as she often did when thinking. "On Varith, the deep reef is a place of danger and beauty. Many do not go there. I went because I was searching for a rare plant that grows only in those depths, a plant that holds water in a way that can clean itself forever. It could change how we store life water in our cities." She paused. "I found the plant, but I also found this creature. It had killed something large, I do not know what. When it saw me, it did not strike. It only watched. I left quickly, but from then, I began to sense it following me. Always just far enough to be unseen." Ben leaned forward. "So you think it marked you somehow?" "Yes," she said. "Some species choose one prey and will not stop until it is theirs. But I think it is not only hunger. I think it is learning me, my movements, my ways. That is why I left my home, to lead it away." Ben rubbed his jaw. "And now it's locked in a research cell, which means it's here. learning the station. Instead, yes, Lyra said. If it escapes, it will continue. That thought stayed with Ben the rest of the day. It followed him into the next morning when the message came from security. Containment breach in research wing. Assistance requested. Ben didn't even need to read the rest. He was already moving. When he reached the wing, alarms were flashing, but the corridors were strangely quiet. A security officer met him at the checkpoint. The thing tore through the first restraint layer. We're evacuating non-essential staff. You know the station's maintenance passages better than anyone. We need you to help predict where it might go. Ben nodded grimly. If it's like before, it'll head for warmth. The hydroponics bay is still sealed, but the cargo wing, vents connect there. Shut down those routes and we might box it in. The officer relayed orders over comms. Ben turned to see Lyra walking toward him, ignoring the evacuation signs. You shouldn't be here, he said. It will come for me, she replied. If I move where we want it to go, we can guide it. Ben hesitated only a moment before, nodding. Then stay on comms. And if I say run, you run. They moved fast, sealing vent access points and locking bulkheads. Reports came in over comms. Sightings in the mid-deck maintenance hall, movement near the agricultural wing. The pattern was clear. It was circling, narrowing in. Finally, a call came from the observation post near the old hydroponics bay. We've got movement in the outer corridor. It's headed your way. Ben and Lyra exchanged a glance. This was their chance. They entered the bay, closing the heavy door behind them. The heat emitters were still in place from before, though powered down. Ben activated them, bringing the center of the bay to a warm, humid glow. Stay in the middle, Ben told her, moving to the control station. If it comes in, I'll seal it again. Lyra stood in the center, her head tilted slightly as she listened. The sound came first, a soft scrape, then a rapid sequence of clicks. The vent near the far wall shuddered and the creature emerged. It moved faster this time, no hesitation, no testing. It knew where it wanted to be. Ben triggered the seal, but the creature was already inside the triangle of heat. It stopped a few paces from Lyra, body low, eyes locked on her. Lyra didn't move. It's waiting, she said softly. It wants me to move first. Ben's fingers hovered over the net launcher. Don't give it what it wants. Seconds stretched. Then, with a sudden twist, the creature lunged. Not toward Lyra, but toward the side wall, aiming for the vent above. Ben fired. The net exploded, outward, catching it mid-leap. The magnetic locks clamped down hard, pinning it to the floor. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes on the creature. Why me? She whispered, almost to herself. The creature thrashed once, then went still, watching her with those green, unblinking eyes. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then its mouth opened, not in attack, but in a slow, deliberate motion. Something dropped from between its teeth. It was a small, twisted fragment of the deep reef plant she had gone to find. Ben stared. It's giving it to you? Lyra knelt, careful to stay outside the reach of its limbs. Or returning it, she said, quietly. She didn't touch the fragment, but she understood. On Vayrith, some hunters are not only killers, some are keepers of what they take. It marked me because I had taken from its reef. It followed me to give back, or to bind me to it. Ben shook his head. That's not the kind of gift I'd want. Lyra stood slowly. Now it has returned it. Maybe the hunt ends. Security arrived moments later, this time with a containment pod reinforced for creatures twice its size. They took it without trouble. It didn't fight. Its eyes stayed on Lyra until the door shut between them. Back in their unit, Lyra placed the plant fragment in a sealed glass jar on Ben's desk, beside the stubborn little plant that had been there since the beginning. Will it come back? Ben asked. I don't know, she said honestly. But if it does, it will not be for the same reason. They stood in quiet for a while, the hum of the station wrapping around them. Outside the window, the stars drifted in slow silence. Ben finally broke it with a small smile. Well, next time you get a roommate notice, I hope it's someone who just borrows tea. Lyra's mouth curved faintly. I would like that too.